It's about time we get this division back on track. UFC 259 is where this story starts. Petr Yan was the champion. Aljamain Sterling, the number one contender. We got a great fight. A fight that Sterling started out red hot, just super,
Insane pace.
yeah, just putting up an insane pace. However, Petr Yan does what Petr Yan does. He's essentially, his brain is essentially like a computer.
Yeah.
So he reads everything you do in round one,
Oh, dude.
and then he just has a plan of attack against it the rest of the way. We
Mm.
saw it in the Corey Sandhagen fight. Sandhagen wins round one, didn't win around the rest of the fight. Here with Sterling, I would argue he didn't win around the rest of the way. Unfortunately, though, in round four, really when Jan was really starting to pile it on and maybe looked like he could even get a finish in that round or round five, he throws an illegal knee while Sterling is down. Sterling unable to continue. That
Mm-hmm.
means, Dominic, that for the first time in UFC history, a belt changed hands via disqualification. A terrible way to end that fight. It was our winner at the Joey's for the most disappointing fight of the year simply for that finish.
Yeah.
And a lot came of it since. We were expecting an immediate rematch. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen because why would it? Sterling having to get serious neck surgery. There was even some questions on maybe what his future would hold. Petr Yan and him were booked for UFC 267. It was the co-main event for that card in Abu Dhabi. Sterling pulls out. He wasn't ready to go quite yet. In steps Corey Sandhagen. We get an awesome 5-round fight between those two for an interim title. So now here we are. Interim champion versus champion. And the champion comes in at a plus 360 as of now on the odds.
Mm.
A lot of people look at that first fight and go, Petr Yan was clearly winning, was going to win that fight, and they don't see this fight going any different. My question for you, Dominic, when you look back on that first fight, is that the story you take away from it? Is there anything different to the narrative? The narrative right now is that Petr Yan pretty much dominated that fight and that he would again. But when you go back and look at that first fight, do you feel like maybe Sterling did better than people give him credit for, and maybe that makes him more of a viable underdog here?
Yeah, I think he did do better. I think he just gassed himself out. This fight's going to be a complete 180 from that first fight. I think it's going to be very different. I think it's going to be a very different game plan and approach for Sterling. And Petr Yan's even acknowledged that on Embedded. I saw where he said, Sterling came out with a crazy pace in the first fight. I know he's not going to do that in the rematch. And you just can't. Like, against a guy as technically precise as Petr Yan, I don't like. Again, he's willing to lose the first round. We see it in almost every fight that he has. But are you willing to go in there and give it your all in round one to try and get a finish only to come up short and then you're fucked the rest of the way? Because that's kind of what happened in the first fight. So I think this is going to be very strategic on both ends. And it's just a matter of, who's going to win this game of chess. But the narrative, Petr Yan did dominate, but I think people are just forgetting like Sterling looked really good for the short time being. So look for this fight to be much different. I'm not saying much closer, one way or another, or one-sided one way or another, but it's going to have a completely different storyline this time around than the first one. I'm amped, honestly, for this one. It's just I felt like that fight happened like 5 years ago, and we're finally getting it here. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it does feel like that fight happened a long time ago. I mean, it's just this division is too good to be kind of this up in the air.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't like Sterling posing with the belt and thought he was acting up putting on a performance when he couldn't continue. I say that's all a wash. Like, it doesn't matter.
Mm.
I'm no judge of I'm not going to judge a man's acting performance. I have no idea.
Yeah.
All I know is Petr Yan threw an illegal strike, and it is what
Yes.
it is. I mean, he has to face the consequences of what happens with that. That being said, I went back and watched the first fight, and a lot of people were trying to tell me like it's a lot closer than you remember, and I went back and watched it, and I'm like, don't get me wrong, Sterling wins round one clearly. I mean, he puts it, he really goes for it. But man, the difference between him in round one and the rest of that fight is
Oh
like
yeah.
night and day. And some
Yes.
of that is his own fault for starting to,
Gas.
gas. But Peter Yan also just turns it up.
Mm.
So when I look at this fight, Dominic, you said you think it's going to be a complete 180. Well, I think if Aljamain Sterling just like completely changes his game plan and says like, okay, now we're going to not do anything we did in that first fight, I actually think that might be worse for him. I think it might be because I don't. Peter Yan, I am of the opinion Peter Yan is the best fighter in the entire company. I know pound for pound, Usman, he holds the like. Don't get me
Right.
wrong, he is number one. But as far as skill for skill, tit
Yeah.
for tat, I think Peter Yan is the best in the company. Aljamain Sterling showed a way to at least win a round against Sterling. You come out hot. You
Yeah.
come out early. Take it to him early. He just went too hard. I mean, he could have reeled it back 50% and still probably won that round.
Yeah. Yeah.
But instead, he just like exerted all this energy right away, whether it's because of nerves or maybe really feeling like he could get him out of there in a round. Not the best decision. But I still think that if Aljamain Sterling wants a chance of winning this fight, I think he has to start out as the aggressor early.
Yeah.
I still think that that's the game plan here. Try to build a lead on Peter Yan. Can you get that lead? Can you win one, 2, and 3, and then play defense for rounds 4 and 5? It's a tall task. I'm siding with Peter Yan here. I'm just saying that if Aljamain Sterling wants to win this fight, that's the way you do it. And if in the heat of the battle in, let's say, round 1 or 2, what if there's a slip? What if there's a scramble? Aljamain Sterling gets top position on Peter Yan. That's his world.
Yes.
Peter Yan outclassed him a bit in the first round when it came to trips and takedowns. But I would still say if Aljamain Sterling is able to have Peter Yan on his back,
Yes.
it at least favors him.
I agree.
But it's the chances of getting there are just slim. I just think that I don't think if Aljamain Sterling decides we're gonna try to save some of that energy, like let's not go out and I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. Like you're talking about, like this chess match. Like let's try to read Peter Yan. Let's not get overzealous. Let's not come out aggressive. I think that's actually going to be worse. He's just going to get steamrolled if he does that. Because if he doesn't even really go for it early, then I think Peter Yan is just a far more high IQ fighter, has more skills, and I think that that's just going to show, and it would be a pretty one-sided beating the rest of the way.
Yeah, I want to see how Sterling can go with the grappling department because, like you said, he is great on the ground. We saw in that first one very sloppy takedowns, mostly because he was gassed.
Yeah.
But if he can
he
really
failed.
try and
He
yeah,
failed to get that fight to where he wanted to in the first one.
yeah, so I almost wonder, like, have they looked back and seen is there any sort of openings that Jan allows for a level change because that could pay dividends because we've not really seen Jan on his back. So like for all we know, if Sterling can get that one, there's a round in the books right there. For all we know, he might be able to keep him down. I mean, you saw how easy he did it to Corey Sandhagen. So I'm looking for Sterling in these level changes to see if he wants to grapple.